Okay, can you guys see it?
What,
Yes.
yep.
Monsoon panel, planer panels, intense 6-month labor of love. This is a PowerPoint presentation I put together for you guys.
Okay.
All right. I don't know why before I was able to view full screen, but it's not doing that now. I don't know why. Well, anyway, let's go ahead and get started. God, how in the world does this work? What I wanted to start out with is a question about what people want out of their stereos. You know, what's your goal? What are you trying to do? A lot of people just want things to sound better than it did. Well, that's a good goal, especially if it's starting, kind of from the beginning. Other people just want it to sound really good, but good is kind of like a subjective word, right? What's good to me might not be good to you. Dynamic range and inner detailing is often a discussion of reviewers, and soundstage size is about the same. But what about other goals? What I want to talk a little bit about you guys, not just about me. But anyway, the goal I've always had for our system is to sound like you were there. I don't want any coloration. I just want it to sound just like a piano or just like a bass or whatever. And that's always been the goal that I've been trying to achieve in all the systems that I've had. And nothing has really come close to that. And but anyway, this is what I started out with several years ago. And it was a pair of Bozaks, and what I wanted to try to do is to make the Bozaks sound. I knew they had potential, and I wanted to get them to sound as good as they could by current standards. And that took a long time, and frankly, it just didn't work. The speakers were just too old. The technology was just too old. So after we blew up the left channel mid-range driver watching a movie one night. In fact, the last time I had a meeting here at our house, the left channel was limping, and we decided to go ahead and go a different route. I bought a pair of monsoon speakers for our van. I've got a little home theater in our van, and I had a pair of those in there. These are PC speakers. The company was in business from '96 to '04, and they tried to get into the home theater or the home stereo business. They didn't have much luck. But I've always liked the RS1Bs. I don't know if anybody's heard of them, but I've always liked them, especially the looks of them. I thought the looks were good. So what I decided to do was to salvage as much of the old Bozak project as possible, and change the design parameters a little bit. This time I wanted to compromise as little as possible on space. I just wanted to see what that was going to do, and in order to get power handling requirements, I needed 6 monsoon speakers per side. And the other thing I wanted to do when I cobbled these guys together was to pay as much attention to detail as possible. It kind of went down the route like this. If you're in a Formula One race car, you do things like balance universal joints, okay, and you dynamically balance drive shafts, and you dynamically balance wheels with lug nuts on, all sorts of things, and you pay attention to that level of detail on every single part of your system, things really start to change. And so in order to get these monsoons to work, I had a reality shot. Because when I bought some, this is what I found inside. They were just too old. These were N32 magnets that they used, neodymium N32 magnets on the inside. I pulled one apart, and that's what the magnet structure looked like inside.
Hey, Phil, let me interrupt you for a moment. I'm sorry. Guys, can everybody please mute except for Phil, because we're still getting a lot of background noise. And Phil, maybe if you turn your speaker down a little bit, I think you're getting feedback from the speaker to your mic as you speak.
All right, let me do that. Hold on. Is that better?
I think so. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
A lot better.
All right. So anyway, so the monsoons were at least 16 years old, and if not older. And this is what I was able to get. I bought a whole bunch of them off of eBay. But this technology was licensed by Eminent Technology to the Canadian company for what they called the linear field planar magnetic driver. And it was, like I say, it was a PC speaker, and it handles 30 watts, and it got rave reviews from folks out in PC land about being the best speaker for a PC that you could buy, period, end of story. So I thought, well, let's go ahead and throw a pair in the van and see what happens. And Althea gave me an idea. She says, well, why don't you just use these in our home speakers? And I thought, well, that would be a good idea. But when I took that apart, I realized that it was going to be a long journey. So I contacted Bruce Thigpen of Eminent Technology, and he was able to source me replacement magnets. These are N52s, much stronger. And the little red pieces of tape mark the polarity of the magnets. I think that was the south polarity. And anyway, all of them face in on both sides. They all face in in the same way, which was a surprise to me. I thought one side would be north and the other south, but that's not the case. So I built a total of 4 different jigs. This one I got next shows how it is that the diaphragm was pre-tensioned. And I was able to get 180 hertz resonance through all the system, all the speakers that I rebuilt, all dozen of them that I rebuilt. Actually, I rebuilt 16 of them. And it turned out pretty good. It was a long time to do all this stuff. But after the speakers were cobbled together, and I had to figure out what shape the panel needed to be. And I went over to a dumpster and got a box from a big screen TV, and I was able to carve it up. And I tried 17 different combinations. And once I started finding out what worked, I realized that an asymmetrical pattern was the one that was going to be the best sounding. Now, that didn't seem logical to me, but it's the way it worked. And I got, let's see, the next screen I think shows you the results, the different size panels. I started out with a 4-inch wide and a 15-inch. By the way, this is this point over here. Can you see my cursor? This point over here is the free air resonance of the speaker. As you can see, it's the same in all of them. But look at things like, like over here on the right side with the 5 and 5. This is definitely a not a linear type of a driver with those panel dimensions. And down here in the lower left, the 1.5 and 2.5 had some issues not being linear in the lower frequency region. But if you look at what I've ended up with was a 3.5 and a 6.5, and it really got smooth, especially in the upper frequency region. Now I made all these measurements out in my driveway outside, and the panel was standing upright as I did it with an air gap below it. So like I said, it took 17 measurements in order to figure out what was what. And wow. Okay, so then came the woofers. After I got the panel dimensions right, that meeting that we had over at AG's house where he played this dual 10-inch woofer system, man, I really liked that. I thought that was a great design. And the Bozaks, frankly, I just didn't like them. So I decided to give them a shot. And there were probably around 100 emails, give or take, back and forth between this problem and that problem. And this is the size of the box that I started with. And what I did is I added length to the sides. Again, very much in the same way as before. I made a measurement to see how it was going to look, and ended up with the final dimension. And I used 2 woofers that AJ also recommended by a company called MCM, and they're a pair of 12s. And the damping material that I used, I got from Hobby Lobby. It's a polyester material, but it's used on exterior chairs, you know, like lounge chairs and stuff like that outside for repadding it. And it has a progressive amount of density. At the very ends, at one end it's very, very dense, and at the other end it's very fluffy. And I used 2 layers of that behind it in order to get the timing right, and it worked out pretty well. I think the next slide's a couple of pictures of the differences in what I ended up with. Anyway, so the woofer box was finalized, the mid-range panel size was finalized, and then came offset. And I went back and forth a lot about aligning the diaphragms and not aligning the diaphragms and recessing. And, you know, I mean, there's a lot of good things said on both sides of it as to whether or not they should be recessed or the diaphragm should be aligned. So I did some experiments and I asked people and I got all sorts of different answers. And, but anyway, what I ended up with in the final versions, I flush mounted all of them, with the exception of the super tweeter, which I couldn't flush mount because it has a curved face on it. But the edges of it are sunk in flush, to where where the least amount of it is exposed. That's flush surface, and it sounds pretty good. All right, so then. This is the old network board off of the Bozaks. What I did is I built each channel on its own board. The woofer was inside. I moved the woofer network onto the back of the woofer. As you can see it there on the left-hand side of the screen. But the other boards were just still prototype boards that I just soldered and hacked and cobbled together. And the only thing I really had to do when I changed from this network to the one that I'm using now is to lower the crossover frequency between the woofer and the mid-range. It was 438 hertz, and now it's 252. Okay, the other thing that I did for the network is I changed out all of the signal path capacitors to paper and oils for the mids and tweets, Teflons in the super tweet. I went to foil inductors. There's a question? I guess not. I went to foil inductors again in the signal path, wherever possible or whenever possible. The only exception would be in the woofer where the DC resistance was too high to use it. And let's see. So these are pictures of I bought the capacitors from Russia, and the left one's a KBGMN, and the right one's an FD3, and they're pretty well regarded in the industry. Okay, so this is what the new crossover network boards look like. They're each mounted on their own panel. And all of the point-to-point wiring I replaced. I don't know if you can really see it, but all the point-to-point wiring is replaced with PC-OCC wiring. I changed the interconnects out too between the Oppo and the preamp and the Mac, also with that at different times. But I use the Bessel network network design because it's phase linear in the passband, and again, that's what the design goal was. And I chose a 4th order network to match the absolute phase at the crossover frequencies between the super tweeter, the tweeter, and the mid range. The woofer is a 2nd order, not a 4th order. And during the last audio show, I talked to the MBL folks, and they use a 4th order. All right, so the speaker wiring, there's a dedicated speaker wire run to every crossover network. Since there's 4 networks, there's 4 wire runs. 3 of those are handmade, and the woofer though is using a Cardus Forest 11, but they're all star quads. Took a while to make those wires. Okay, so this is what happened. This is what I came up with, and it looks quite a bit like an RS1B. there was a link earlier that Alan sent out to a guy by the name of Ken Fritz, and he built this incredible home theater system, 1,800 pounds or something like that each. Had huge room to put them in. I think the speakers were like 9 feet high or something. Anyway, I think he'd be proud of this too. This is a pretty good effort.
How
Sounds
many of
good.
you guys watched that video? I had put the link in the meeting comments. It's very sad because he was recently diagnosed with ALS.
Yeah,
I watched that.
Yeah, that was amazing what he did.
Yeah,
Really
incredible.
was. Yeah. Well, yeah.
So, any relation to Fritz speakers?
None.
Yeah, it's just a private party.
Okay.
Okay, so then it came time to figure out what it was doing, and this is an REW measurement, room equalization wizard measurement I made with my calibrated microphone from the sweet spot, and I was just awestruck is the word. The sound pressure was so uniform. I was not ready for it. I really was not. And and that's just that one place at the sweet spot that it measured like that. Of course, it's going to vary at different places, but anyway.
And that's with 1/12 smoothing, so that's pretty high resolution too.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Yeah, if I smoothed at the 24th or 48th, it would be a lot more linear than that. All right. So then,
sorry, the other way, 1/6 or 1/3 is more. 1/48 would make it look a lot more wrinkly.
No, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong.
No, I think AJ's right. But regardless, that's pretty good resolution you used for the measurement. That's the point.
Well, anyway, so what I did is after I got all the experimentation done, it was time to go ahead and figure out what it was that I wanted to make the speakers look like. And if you notice that there's a dip right around 10 kilohertz right there, and so I decided to go ahead and put a second tweeter in and use it as in the Apollo array configuration, and to see if that would make a difference. And frankly, it did. I got one of them working, like I said just a little while ago, and it has really made a difference. So Brad finished the pair, and I screwed one of them up. I had to take it back. The jigsaw jumped out and put a nick in the finish, and so it's being repaired. Okay, so this is the band that I'm still working on. I'm using T-pad attenuators on the system to lower the standing wave ratio between the amp and the crossover and the drivers. And it takes a long time in order to get these things right. And I didn't have the right parts at the right time, so I ordered some more, and I was able to cobble a few things together, and I raised that portion of the spectrum, the tweeter portion of the spectrum, up 1 dB, no, a little bit less than that, about 0.7 of a dB, and it brought it up in line with the rest of them. I still got a little bit of a dip from the last measurement, but it's getting a lot better. Okay, so it's a back view of the panel. Each one of the panels, or each one of the sections, has its own connection down on the lower left to a copper terminal block. I'm using stainless steel screws, all copper connections. That's PC-OCC wiring that I made that runs to each one of the drivers. And let's see, what else can I say? On the right side is a close-up of the new network board, and that's just not a piece of felt over a piece of plywood. It starts out with 1/2-inch plywood. I use a product called Noico, which is an anti-resonance product that they use in cars in order to keep the doors from rattling in the big boombox cars. I used an acoustic felt on top of that in order to, I had extra stuff laying around, so I thought, what the heck? Let's go ahead and lay it on there and see what happens. Looks pretty nice. I use stainless steel binding posts and 10-amp copper lug terminals everywhere. That's a real good shot of the point-to-point wiring there. All that gray wiring is PCLCC. And every one of those components I've hand matched. If I needed an 8.32 millihenry inductor, that inductor was exactly 8.32 millihenries. And guess what? The inductor on the other channel, 8.32 millihenries. Not 8.33 or 8.31, 8.32. And all of the capacitors are hand matched in the same way. Sometimes I needed, like on the right, in the right picture on the right, you can see there's a couple of extra little capacitors on there. I needed that in order to match with the left channel. That's the right channel network.
So a quick question. So there's a little bit different variation in the driver. So you're kind of custom tweaking it so that the output matches.
Yes,
overall.
Exactly. I bought a unit called DATS, the third version of it. It measures, does the free air measurements and impedance measurements and of each one of the drivers. So I take all of that into consideration when I put the network design together. And each is contoured for that speaker because there's variations between speakers. And so I had to take all that in consideration in designing the network. And that took a couple of hours. But okay, so that's about all the techno babble that I wanted to talk to you about. But the big question is, you got all this stuff, how does it sound? Well, I know this at the first time have had people come over, some folks from Ocala and some from Homosassa and stuff like that, and that are that have planar systems themselves, and they're just wowed. They just can't believe it. They know that it's very different from what they're used to hearing, and the psychoacoustic illusion is very good, well off axis. Pianos are just incredible. The lower registers, which is really hard to get right, are right. You can hear that gutsy sound in those lower register strings, and you can tell that they're wire wounds, and it's really cool. Soundstage is nice and large defined. The top octave again is a little off, so the clarity and the spaciousness needs to be worked on a little bit. The dynamics are good. The sensitivity right now is about 94 dB, and the power handling limits it to about 118 peak. And the inner detailing is really something. When an acoustic guitar is playing, and you can just hear, you know, the fingers on the frets and the wire wound resonating against the body. Oh, it's just so cool. It really is. So a lot of questions that people ask me when they come and hear this project. The first one is, how long did it take to rebuild one of the mid-range drivers? Well, taking it apart really took the longest because I had to gut everything and clean it all up. And neodymium is carcinogen, so you gotta watch how you handle it. I did it all outdoors, and you know, I had to fight the weather. But it took about 6 hours per driver from the time I got it, started drilling on it to take it apart, until I finally pop-riveted it back together. It cost me about, depending upon the person, between $100 and $120 for a pair of drivers. And I bought extras because I didn't know if the folks from eBay were gonna, you know, tell the truth about them and give me something that worked. So fortunately, every single one of the diaphragms was good, and every one of them. I worked about 20 hours a week and about 26 weeks total on the rebuild, and I've got right now about almost about $7,000 in it. What I want to change? Well, I was thinking about 4 more super tweeters until I heard these. I think 2 is going to be fine. I really want to work on the signal source. because I think that the Oppo still can't, really hack it, even though I did put an analog power supply in it, which made a huge difference, by the way. The Oppo is probably still the limiting factor in the system.
You're not using a separate DAC, are you, Phil?
No, I'm using the DAC in the Oppo. I beat up on the Oppo quite a bit. If anybody who knows me, that as soon as I get a piece of gear, the first thing I got to do is take the top off and see what's inside and see what they did wrong. And that switching power supply that they used in the Oppo it just ain't very good at all. It injected a lot of noise into it, and the analog supply really cleaned it up. How did I come up with what I wanted to do? Well, that's kind of like the goal of everybody in an audio club, is just go over and listen to somebody else's system and see what they're doing. And if you like what you hear, then try and make yours do the same thing. That's basically how I got it going. I've heard a lot of planar speakers from a lot of different systems. And for those of you who are familiar, who are older, you'll remember a pair of speakers called Apogee, which were the first full range planar speakers to hit the market way back in I guess it was the 80s. Yeah, it was. And I always liked the way that they sound, but man, they were hard to drive. And they were very, very sensitive. The mid-range and tweeter panels would always sag. And anyway, so I like the sound of planers. I know that there's people who like horns and stuff like that. That's fine, but to me, it just doesn't give me the feeling of being there, and this system does. So that's about it. Yeah, the new panels were delivered from Brad yesterday. I didn't update the thing. I didn't tell you about the gouge until the meeting. Yeah, it is just one of those stupid things that I did, and the jigsaw jumped out and it just put a nick in the panel in the finish, gouged right all the way down to the MDF, and took the veneer out. So he's working on fixing them.
What are the crossover points?
The crossover points. That's a good question. 252 for the woofer to the mid. It's 2.85 kilohertz from the mid to the tweet. The tweet goes to 8.5 kilohertz, then to the super tweet, and the super tweet goes up from there.
Have you tried running the tweeters on the outside?
Pardon me?
Side?
Pardon me?
Have you tried putting the tweeters towards the outside and see what it sounds like versus the inside?
No, I haven't.
Well, there you go. Next weekend you can work on that. Is there anything left from the Bozak, the Philzak system? Is it just pieces of the crossover, all that's left?
No, I think there's only one coil that's left from the old network, and it's no wire wound. And it just happened to be the right value, and I haven't changed it out yet. One day I'll probably change everything out to ribbons.
You should have Althea make a little multimedia art project out of the leftover parts from Bozak as a testament to the history.
I've got 6 12-inch Bozak woofers for sale if anybody's looking for them.
No eulogy?
No eulogy. We're not gonna, burn them in effigy or anything like that. I don't know what I'm gonna do with those things yet. I've got the right channel driver, mid-range driver, works great. The left channel, the bobbin is got overheated, so it's misaligned now, and loud volumes it'll scrape. Low volumes it's fine, but loud volumes you can hear it hitting the whole piece.
I'm curious, Phil, with that Hobby Lobby stuff you put in. Hobby Lobby is a very conservative leaning business. So does the sound shift to the right?
Good question. I'd say that the answer to that would be no. It's probably more middle road.
It's being conservative.
Yeah.
I think you should name these speakers the Coronas.
The Coronas. That's a good one. I have to think about that. Of course, Alan, I've been beaten up on these things since November.
Okay.
I missed the Hobby Lobby reference. What was the Hobby Lobby reference?
That's what I use for the insulation behind the woofers.
Ah,
Yeah, the owner of Hobby Lobby is very right leaning, so I thought maybe they would shift the soundstage a bit.
Let's talk about audio, not politics, please. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully it'll match the sound.
You could call them the cold fessies.
Well, I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do with them yet. I know that when I ran the REW measurement on it, what I had to do was to tweak in the sub. And Althea is a person who really likes a lot of bass. So what I have to do is to tweak the bass up a little bit more than what I'd like it to be. But it really isn't all that objectionable. It's just it just sounds, to me, it just sounds a little bit more unnatural. But you got to live with the person, so that's what you do.
To the image, small, medium, or large, would you say?
I would say right now the image a little bit better than medium, but not quite extra large. I've heard some systems to where sound's coming from everywhere in the room with only two speakers, but these don't do that. I think that's probably a little bit more because of the room I got. I'm very limited by this room. And I know that I've pushed them around a little bit, and I've gotten the sound to be deeper and to be a little bit better focused as a result. But I haven't gotten that magic point yet to where it is that the sound just seems to come from everywhere.
I think AJ has a question. His hand's up.
Yeah.
was it my imagination, or did the new panels look a bit narrower and then it looks like a different color? You maybe went with like a lighter color, but the size looks different too.
No, that's a psychoacoustic illusion. No, actually, the panels are exactly the same size. The height and width are the same. They're thicker. The old panels were 3/4, and these are 1 3/8.
How did you decide on the height of the drivers?
That's a really good question, because I chopped the top and bottom off too to see what was going on with that. And those measurements that I made with the panel width, I just ended up at that particular measurement. And they're actually, if once you come and see them, they're a little closer to the top than they are the bottom. Again, the measurement proved that was the best place for them. And the height that I've got them off of the floor centers the tweeter on your ear in the sitting position.
How does the soundstage depth compare with your prior system? Much
better. The back corners have a whole lot more resolution to them. Like if you hear an organ piece, a really well recorded organ piece, and you listen, you can hear the ranks opening and closing. The baffles and the ranks opening and closing. You can hear it to where it is before it was only alluded to. There's a lot more detailing in the back corners, a lot more air. So it's a very, very different sounding system. The lower mid range is where it sounds the most different. All I can say is that I had no idea that it was missing, and I'm glad it's there.
It reminds me of the PS Audio Infinity, the new version they are working on. I don't know if they're shipping yet. If you've seen Paul McGowan's videos at all about that.
I have not. Colin, do you have a question?
Are you selling your old Bozak speakers then?
I am.
I mean, I know that they're worth more than they'll probably sell for, but it's hard to find a market for some of these old names that people don't remember anymore.
I know. That's I even haven't tried to sell them yet. I took everything out of the boxes and I actually tossed the boxes. I don't even have the boxes anymore. But I do have the drivers because I didn't think anybody would really want to buy that old system. And what did I? Oh, I gave the mid and tweeter box away to a friend. And what else did I do? That was about it.
Why didn't you
AJ's
use
holding
the
his hand up.
Bozak drivers?
Pardon me?
Why didn't you use the old Bozak whoopers?
I just didn't like them. And plus the fact I wanted to go with AJ's cardioid speakers, and the VAS was too low on the Bozaks. The VAS on the MCMs is like 95, and on the Bozaks it was like 48.
And you talk about your sub. You also have the separate subwoofer as well.
Oh yeah, I've got a interesting story about that. I was looking for a subwoofer for our car, and I was in a secondhand store one day, and there was a box there for an Infinity 12-inch sub, and I thought, well, I'll go ahead and buy that. They wanted $10 for it, and I brought it home and never opened the box, never even looked at it when it was in the store, and for $10, I thought, hey, but it said on the box, it says works fine. So I trusted them, and it sat in the back utility room for about 6 years. And then one day Althea said, well, I want some more bass. Well, I said, well, let's try subwoofer. And long story short, we came up with that. I bought a Dayton Audio plate amp with a 5-band DSP. And I used that with it. And I built a box. I was able to find the Teal small parameters for it, and I built a box for it. And it has a corner frequency of 19 hertz. So together, it sounds pretty darn nice.
So where do the sealed subs? You have sealed subs also? Are you saying?
No.
Oh, sealed
well, it's a ported.
Okay, so when does that come in? When does the ported sub come in?
60 hertz.
At 60.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's
by the way,
I found out with any type of open baffle, whether it's a U frame, H frame, or whatever, the bottom octave really can use help with a more of a vented or a sealed enclosure. That's where I think it really matters, rather than just leaving it open baffle.
Yeah, it definitely needed help. I mean, you could hear it as it rolled off, and you could also hear the effects of the baffle as the frequency went up. You know, the efficiency went up. You know, as the frequency went up. But I didn't want it to go down real low. I didn't want the open baffles to go down. You know, at their U frames. I didn't want it to go down below 40 hertz. So and the sound pressure curves, the free air, the outside curves, the measurements that I made outside, just didn't show that it was a good candidate to go down anywhere close to that region. So I just let them. I know I built a smaller box, you know, so that it didn't go down so deep, and made it more linear. But it definitely needs the sub.
No, I'm curious.
I was going to say earlier that what's old is new. I don't know if you noticed that KLH is back.
No.
And not only is KLH back, but the Model 9, which is a large planar ribbon, or I'm not sure what exactly the tech is, but they're making the KLH Model 9 again.
Wow.
Wow.
Is it owned by some Asian company that just bought the name, or is it legit?
I don't know, but I saw it on Audio Shark. Mike mentioned yesterday or last night on Audio Shark that he likes the KLH Model 9, and I thought, the new one. And I knew that KLH had come back with some box speakers because I'd seen it on AV Nirvana and a couple of other, but I didn't realize that the company had come back with a planar speaker like that. And I looked it up last night, and sure enough, it's about 13,000 for the pair. But they're making the KLH Model 9, full range, I think, electrostat.
The son took over the company, and he has an investor, and they debuted the renewed KLH Model 9 3 years ago at CES, and it was very impressive.
Interesting. Quick question, Phil. I know that both John and AJ tend to use just digital like DSP for crossovers. It would seem to make it easier for you to do quick changes and experimentation if you went that route. Why not?
Well, I'm pretty happy with the way it sounds right now. I'm really not going to mess with it much.
It's calm as hell.
You want to shut it down for the air?
So it probably would have shortened the R&D time, considerably if I went with a DSP. But okay, Sarah.
You can use it. You can use it to prototype, and if you want to build a passive speaker, 99% of your legwork is done in terms of the filter design and all that, and then you can do it passively. But DSP is fantastic for development. I understand not everybody wants an active speaker versus a passive. When it comes to doing what you're doing, which is developing and tweaking and all that sort of thing, the DSP just gives you endless, possibilities. And then when you finally decide what you want to do, then of course you can do it passively like you've done.
The DSP on the subwoofer is a lifesaver. I spent a couple of hours, I guess a week or two ago, in tweaking it in, and you're right, AJ. It just really saves you a whole lot of time because you can adjust things just on the fly, through a USB connection and control it from your PC and tweak it just whatever way you want. And in fact, the meeting that I'm going to do with Colin, we're going to talk a little bit about that. But,
you can tweak it per recording. Also, there are a lot of recordings that are really, really bass shy, and the only way you can solve that, because if you want to listen to the recording, some of them are really good recordings, except they don't have any bass. The only way you could semi solve that is to be able to have control over the bass.
That's pretty incredible what you've been able to do. I think you're definitely the 1% of audiophiles who can envision, create, and implement something like that. AJ and John being the other two that I know of in our club that we're fortunate to have as members, they can do that.
Charlie's one of them now.
Yeah.
Who's Charlie? Charlie who?
When I'm allowed over there.
Charlie who?
Charlie Hurt.
Hurt?
Yeah, he's doing an outside system, and I got him the equipment, and I kind of told him how to put it together, and that's what he's doing. He's spending a lot of time outside listening to his outside system now.
He's a full-blown DIYer now, Charlie Hurt.
Hot dog.
Who knew?
That's probably inside us all.
Lenny, you're muted.
Oh, there we go. Is he still keeping the avant-garde?
Oh yeah, that was just an outside system. Yeah, that's just an outside system. His main system's the avant-gardes.
He has his like rock acoustic speakers outside or something or other, outdoor speakers. Yeah, Colin.
So, Phil, did you buy these individual Monsoon speakers on eBay as kits and then take out the drivers, or were you able to find the drivers separately?
No, I had most of them came. I was able to buy a couple of them that had the individual satellite speakers, but most of them came with subwoofers. So quote unquote subwoofers, 6.5-inch speaker in a 2-liter box or whatever it was. and came with a little plate amp. So I threw all the other stuff away, but I kept the drivers, the planers. But every single one of them, regardless of age, had that same problem where the magnets were literally falling apart.
So you rebuilt them, but what's the longevity going to be once they're rebuilt?
Well, the magnets that I got from Bruce Thigpen of Eminent Technology, and he was the one that licensed the technology originally to Monsoon, and that's his type of speaker. That's the design of his speaker, and he was able to get me some epoxy impregnated neodymiums, and I expect the shelf life of that's going to be somewhere around 30 years.
So
you'll have a new design by then, anyways.
I'll have a new design by then.
So the mid-range is planar, and then what are the tweeters and the super tweeters?
The tweeter is an AMT. It's made by Mundorf. And the super tweeter is a planar also, and it's made by Monocore. It's an RBT 95. I can't remember what the model number of the Mundorf is.
And you're still driving those with your modified Mac monoblocks?
That's it.
So when do they go into production?
Thigpen tried to talk me into rebuilding all those speakers that he has laying around, and I said, nah, it's too much. You have to cook the old drivers in order to get the magnets out, and you got to cook them really hot. You got to do it outdoors because it smells. It reeks to high heaven, and they got to cook for over an hour in order to get the glue softened up. And then once that does it, then you have to take it off, without. It's just a hazardous waste type of situation. I just want to avoid.
Just have them buy the Neo 10s. It'd be cheaper that way.
Yeah, there you go.
In the long run.
But these have a free air resonance of 180 hertz, and the 10 has a free air resonance somewhere around 2K. So they'll go a lot deeper.
No, the Neo 10s, the resonance is 150.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
Is it still available though?
Yes, it is, and they went up in price. That's the problem. Went up to $300 a piece. They used to be $150.
Yeah, it's like
I got 16 of them when they were $150 a piece. Thank goodness.
Yeah, that'd be a whole lot better solution.
Well, we'll look forward maybe later this year when we can meet again in person for you to host again sometime. That'll be incredible.
I actually look forward to that too. I encourage people to bring their own music and listen to whatever favorite analytical track that they have and bring it along. I think they'll be surprised.